There's something almost poetic about the way Jamie Chen and I fight. For the last time, Harrison Wright, Star Wars is not better than Star Trek. Jamie's voice echoes across the bustling campus courtyard, drawing the usual mix of amused glances and eye rolls from our fellow students. Her dark hair catches the autumn sunlight as she gestures wildly, nearly knocking over her pumpkin spice latte. I lean back against the weathered oak tree, our unofficial debate spot since freshman year, and cross my arms. The fact that you're even trying to compare them shows how little you understand about either franchise. Oh, please enlighten me, oh wise one, she retorts, rolling her eyes so hard I worry they might get stuck that way. Because clearly, my 4 years of running the Sci-Fi Club means nothing compared to your extensive knowledge gained from what was it again? Oh right? Watching the movies once when you were 12. This is how it always goes between us. Ever since that first day in Introduction to Film Studies, when I had the audacity to suggest that practical effects were superior to CGI, and Jamie looked at me like I personally offended her ancestors. Our professor had to cut our debate short when it threatened to consume the entire class period. Now, 3 years later, we're seniors and our arguments have become something of campus legend. The funny thing is, nobody knows the truth, not even our closest friends. You two are literally the most obvious non-couple I've ever seen. Our mutual friend Sarah often says, shaking her head as she watches us bicker over everything from film theories to whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It absolutely does not, no matter what Jamie says. If only Sarah knew that Jamie and I had been dating for the past 2 years. It started, ironically enough, during our biggest fight yet, sophomore year. We were paired up for a semester-long project in advanced film theory. The assignment was to analyze the evolution of romantic comedies and their impact on modern dating culture. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. This is ridiculous. Jamie had declared, pacing around my dorm room at midnight, surrounded by stacks of notes and empty coffee cups. How can you possibly think When Harry Met Sally is overrated? Because it is, I shot back, running my hands through my already messy hair. It's not even Billy Crystal's best work, and the whole premise is brilliant. The premise is brilliant, and you know it. She stopped pacing and stood directly in front of me, hands on her hips, eyes blazing with that familiar fire that always made my heart race a little faster. The idea that two people can be perfect for each other but take forever to realize it because they're too busy fighting their attraction, and then it hit us both at the same time, the way we were standing, barely inches apart, the electricity that had always crackled between us during our arguments suddenly taking on a very different meaning. Oh, Jamie said softly, yeah. I replied, equally quiet. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity but was probably only seconds. Then, moving in perfect sync like we'd rehearsed it, we met in the middle for our first kiss. It was nothing like the romantic comedies we'd been analyzing. There was no swelling music, no perfectly timed rain shower outside. Just two people who'd been dancing around each other for over a year, finally giving in to the inevitable. When we broke apart, Jamie looked at me with that familiar challenging glint in her eye. This doesn't mean you're right about When Harry Met Sally. I couldn't help but laugh. Want to argue about it over dinner tomorrow night? It's a date, she replied with a grin. But I'm picking the restaurant because your taste is clearly questionable. We decided to keep our relationship private, not out of shame or uncertainty, but because we'd accidentally created the perfect cover. Everyone was so convinced that our constant arguing meant we couldn't stand each other that nobody looked closer to see the truth hiding in plain sight. Besides, there was something thrilling about having this secret, about knowing that every heated debate in public was just foreplay for our private moments together. We still argued just as much, but now our fights ended with kisses instead of storming off in opposite directions, like yesterday. When our debate about Star Wars versus Star Trek ended with Jamie pulling me behind the library stacks for a heated makeout session that left us both breathless and late for our next classes. You're still wrong, she'd whispered against my lips, Prove it, I challenged back, and she did, fairly and convincingly, until we heard the library cart approaching and had to quickly pretend to be having another argument. The librarian just shook her head as she passed. "You two need to either get together already or stay away from my library," she muttered, not knowing she was about 2 years too late with that advice. Now, standing in the courtyard with Jamie's coffee getting cold between us, I watch the way her eyes dance with mischief. She launches into another passionate defense of Star Trek's superior world building to everyone else. We look like we're about to start World War III over science fiction. But I see the way her lips quirk up slightly at the corners, the private smile meant only for me. "The philosophical implications alone," she starts, but I cut her off. "Want to continue this debate over dinner?" I ask, using our code phrase that always makes her eyes soften just a fraction. "Only if you're ready to be thoroughly schooled on why you're wrong," she replies. But I catch the way she subtly brushes her fingers against mine as she gathers her things. Sarah, passing by with her study group, calls out, "Just date already and put us all out of our misery." Jamie and I share a secret look before launching into our well-practiced routine of mutual disgust. Me, date him. Her, please. We've gotten good at this performance over the years. Later that night, cuddled together in my apartment watching both Star Wars and Star Trek, because compromise is important in a relationship, even if we'll never admit it publicly. Jamie traces patterns on my arm and says, "You know, sometimes I think we should just tell everyone." I press a kiss to her temple. Where's the fun in that? Besides, can you imagine Sarah's face if she found out we've been dating this whole time? Jamie laughs. "She'd kill us. Absolutely murder us in cold blood." "Worth it though," I say, pulling her closer. "Definitely worth it," she agrees, then adds, "But seriously, if you think the Death Star could beat the Enterprise in a fight." I silence her with a kiss, and for once, we both agree that some arguments are better left unfinished. This has become our love language: passionate debates in public, passionate everything else in private. We argue about movies and books and music, about philosophy and politics, and whether straight bangs would suit Jamie's face shape. They wouldn't, but I lost that argument spectacularly. Every fight is foreplay, every debate a dance we've perfected over the years. We're the Romeo and Juliet of academic discourse, except instead of warring families keeping us apart, it's our own carefully crafted illusion of mutual animosity that keeps our relationship our little secret. Sometimes I wonder what our younger selves would think if they could see us now. Those two freshmen who nearly came to blows over practical effects versus CGI, now sharing a toothbrush holder and arguing about whose turn it is to do the dishes. Would they believe that all that passion could transform into something else entirely? That sometimes the line between love and hate is so thin it's practically invisible. But then I look at Jamie, her face animated as she explains exactly why Captain Picard is a superior leader to Han Solo, and I know we wouldn't have it any other way. Every argument is just another way of saying I love you, every debate another chance to fall in love all over again. Besides, as Jamie often says, usually right before starting another heated discussion, the best relationships are built on passion. And if there's one thing we've never lacked, it's passion, even now. As she launches into her detailed analysis of why the Prime Directive is more ethically sound than the Jedi Code, I can't help but smile. Because while everyone else sees to people who can't stand each other, I see the love of my life. The person who challenges me, frustrates me, and completes me in equal measure. And maybe someday we'll tell everyone the truth. Maybe we'll gather all our friends together and reveal that every fight, every argument, every heated debate was just our unique way of flirting. But for now, I'm content to keep arguing with her in public and loving her in private, because some love stories are better told in whispers and heated glances than in grand declarations. After all, as we learned from all those romantic comedies we analyzed together, the best love stories are the ones that keep you guessing until the very end. The hardest part about secretly dating your supposed arch-nemesis isn't the sneaking around, It's remembering to act like you're not completely in love with them when you're in public. I cannot believe I have to spend an entire semester sitting next to you in advanced screenwriting. I announce loudly as Jamie, and I exit Professor Martinez's classroom. It's our usual performance, the one our classmates have come to expect from us. Jamie shoots me her patented look of disdain, the one that took us weeks to perfect in front of her bathroom mirror. Trust me, right? I'm not thrilled about it either. Your terrible taste in dialogue is going to tank both our grades. But her fingers briefly brush against mine as we walk, a secret touch that sends electricity through my body. That's the thing about our relationship. We've developed an entire language of subtle gestures and hidden meanings. Every insult has a double meaning. Every glare masks a look of love. The truth is, we specifically planned our schedules to get into the same class. Jamie spent 3 hours refreshing the registration page to make sure we got spots next to each other. Not that anyone would ever suspect that. Hey, lovebirds. Sarah calls out as she catches up to us, her trademark smirk in place. It's her favorite joke, calling us lovebirds precisely because everyone thinks we hate each other. If she only knew how right she actually is. Don't even joke about that. Jamie groans, but I catch the slight quirk of her lips that means she's trying not to laugh. I'd rather date a tree stump. At least it wouldn't try to argue that the room is an underappreciated masterpiece. It's called post-ironic appreciation. I defend, secretly delighting in the way her eyes sparkle when she's trying not to break character. But I wouldn't expect someone who thinks Citizen Kane is overrated to understand nuance. Sarah rolls her eyes so hard I worrying for her optical nerves. God, you two are exhausting. I don't know how you've managed to maintain this level of hatred for 3 years. Jamie and I share a millisecond glance that says more than words ever could. If only Sarah knew about the time Jamie surprised me with a frame-by-frame analysis of the room for our anniversary, complete with wine and commentary, or how I spent weeks planning a private screening of Citizen Kane for her birthday with all her favorite snacks and my prepared defense of why she's actually right about it being overrated. The real exhaustion comes from maintaining the charade, not the fighting itself. Like last week, when Jamie showed up at my apartment at midnight, tears in her eyes after her thesis advisor rejected her first draft. All I wanted to do was hold her hand during class the next day, but instead, I had to settle for starting an argument about documentary filmmaking so I could see her smile again. Speaking of exhausting, Sarah continues, "You're both coming to my birthday party this weekend, right? And please, try not to turn it into another debate club meeting." As long as he doesn't start spouting his theories about method acting again, Jamie begins. "Oh, you mean the theories that got me an A+ in performance studies?" I interrupt. That should have been mine, guys." Sarah cuts in. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Can you just exist in the same space for one night without trying to kill each other?" Jamie and I exchange another quick glance. Sarah's parties are actually where some of our closest calls have happened, like last semester, when we both reached for the last slice of pizza at the same time and nearly forgot to snatch our hands away in disgust. Or the time Jamie had a little too much wine and almost called me babe in front of everyone. I'll behave if he does. Jamie says primly, "Don't hold your breath," I retort, but we both know we'll spend the party finding excuses to bump into each other in empty hallways and stolen moments in the kitchen. That's the thing about living a double life. You get really good at finding moments in between moments. Like how we've mastered the art of arguing while walking to class, but taking the long route so we can hold hands through the empty arts building. Or how our study group sessions in the library always seem to end with everyone else leaving first, giving us precious minutes alone among the stacks. But sometimes, the pretense gets harder to maintain. Like when Jamie won the Student Film Festival last month, and I had to pretend to be annoyed instead of bursting with pride. I sat in the audience, gripping my chair to keep from jumping up and cheering. Later that night, I made it up to her with a private celebration in my apartment, complete with champagne and her favorite takeout, or the time I got into a car accident, and Jamie had to pretend she only came to the hospital because Sarah dragged her there. She sat in the waiting room, putting on a show of being annoyed while actually being sick with worrying. When everyone else left to get coffee, she nearly crushed my ribs hugging me, whispering "never scare me like that again" into my neck. The hardest part is watching other couples be couples. They get to hold hands in public, share food at restaurants, post cute pictures on Instagram. Meanwhile, Jamie and I have to maintain separate social media accounts where we occasionally tag each other in passive-aggressive movie reviews. Just admit you were wrong about Nolan's Batman trilogy. Jamie posts at least once a month. Some people wouldn't know good cinematography if it hit them in the face at Jamie Hun, I reply, while simultaneously texting her about what we should have for dinner. Our friends have started making it into a game, screenshotting our online fights and creating memes about our rivalry. There's even a Twitter account called Harrison versus Jamie Updates run by someone in the film department. Jamie follows it religiously, always laughing at how oblivious everyone is. But sometimes, in quiet moments when it's just us, we talk about coming clean. Like now, as we both linger after Sarah leaves, pretending to glare at each other while actually moving closer together. Sometimes I wish I could just kiss you right here, Jamie whispers when we're sure no one's within earshot. What's stopping you? I whisper back, even though we both know why. The truth is, keeping our relationship secret started as a fun game, but it's become something more. It's our thing, our story, told in stolen glances and hidden touches. Every argument is an inside joke, every public fight a private declaration of love. But lately, I've been carrying around my grandmother's ring in my pocket, wondering if maybe it's time for a new chapter in our story. One where we don't have to pretend anymore. Ready to continue our discussion about the merits of French New Wave cinema? Jamie asks loudly as someone passes by. You mean ready to prove how wrong you are? Always, I reply with my best antagonistic smile. But as we walk toward the coffee shop that's become our unofficial debate venue, our hands brush again, and I feel the weight of the ring in my pocket. Maybe soon. I think maybe soon we'll be ready to show the world that sometimes the best love stories are hidden in plain sight. For now, though, we'll keep playing our parts, arguing about movies and literature and art, while secretly building a life together in the spaces between our pretend fights. Because at the end of the day, when we're alone and can finally be ourselves, all the pretending makes the reality that much sweeter. Your taste in movies is still terrible, Jamie whispers as we round the corner where no one can see us. Prove it, I whisper back, pulling her close for a quick kiss, and as we break apart, straightening our clothes and preparing to return to our roles as campus nemeses, I catch her smile, the real one, not the sarcastic one she uses in public, and I know that all the pretending in the world is worth it for moments like these. After all, as Jamie once said during one of our legendary film theory debates, sometimes the best part of a story isn't the ending, it's all the delicious tension leading up to it. And if there's one thing we've mastered, it's the art of tension. So we'll keep arguing in public and loving in private, building our relationship in the spaces between reality and performance, until we're ready to share our story with the world. Because sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that nobody sees coming, even when they've been watching it unfold all along. They say the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. Jamie and I are learning this the hard way, sitting on opposite sides of the film department's screening room, and for the first time in our relationship, our silence isn't an act. It started 3 weeks ago, with what should have been just another one of our staged arguments. The topic: whether nepotism in Hollywood is destroying cinema. A safe topic, or so we thought, but sometimes real feelings hide behind pretend fights. And we didn't realize how close to home this one would hit until it was too late. Of course you defend nepotism, Jamie had said, her voice carrying across the campus cafe. Must be nice having a father who owns a production company. I froze. Coffee cup halfway to my lips. This wasn't part of our usual script. Jamie knew how sensitive I was about my father's business, about the whispers that followed me through film school. She knew because she'd held me through countless nights of self-doubt, reassuring me that my talent stood on its own. At least I'm not trying to ride the diversity wave, I shot back before I could stop myself. The cafe went silent. Several heads turned our way. We'd crossed a line, and we both knew it. This wasn't our usual playful banter. This was real, and it hurt. Jamie's face did something I'd never seen before. It crumpled for a split second before hardening into genuine anger. Not our practiced performance of antagonism, but real fury. She grabbed her bag and walked out without another word. I didn't follow her. I couldn't, not without breaking our cover. So I sat there, surrounded by whispers and stares, feeling like the biggest idiot in the world. Wow, Sarah said from the next table, that was ... intense, even for you too. If only she knew how right she was. Later that night, I waited for Jamie's usual text, the one that always follows our public fights, usually filled with hearts and jokes about our performance. It didn't come. I sent one instead. I'm sorry. I was way out of line. The response came hours later. Me too, but maybe we need some space to figure out what's real and what's pretend anymore. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of actual silence instead of pretend animosity. 3 weeks of passing each other in hallways without even our usual glares. 3 weeks of our friends noticing something was wrong, but not understanding why. The absence of fighting was worse than the fighting itself. I've never seen them like this. I overheard Sarah telling our friend Mike, usually, they can't shut up around each other. Now they act like the other doesn't exist. She's right. Existence feels wrong without Jamie's constant challenges. Her quick wit, her passionate defenses of things I pretend to hate, but secretly admire. Even our fake fights were real conversations in their own way, ways of sharing our thoughts and feelings behind the mask of antagonism. Now, sitting in the screening room where we first kissed 2 years ago, I can't help but think about how thin the line is between performance and reality. Professor Martinez is presenting our midterm film projects, and for the first time since freshman year, Jamie and I didn't review each other's work beforehand. Her film starts playing, a beautiful, raw piece about masks and identity. I recognize some of the footage, us fighting in the courtyard, in the library, in the cafe. But she's edited it in a way that shows the spaces between the arguments, the moments when we thought no one was watching, a lingering look here, a suppressed smile there. It's subtle enough that most people wouldn't notice, but to me, it feels like she's screaming our secret to the world. My heart pounds as I watch. Is this her way of saying she wants to go public, or is it goodbye? When the lights come up, there's a moment of stunned silence before the applause starts. I catch Professor Martinez wiping away a tear. "Magnificent work, Miss Chen," she says. The exploration of performative antagonism as a mask for deeper emotions, brilliant. Jamie doesn't look at me as she accepts the praise, but I see her hands shaking slightly as she gathers her things. My film plays next, a piece about the weight of expectations and the courage it takes to disappoint the right people. I'd started it before our fight, but finished it during these 3 weeks of silence. It's really about my father, about choosing between the path laid out for me and the one I want to forge for myself. But watching it now, I realize it's also about us, about the courage it takes to be real in a world of performances. When it ends, I hear Jamie's sharp intake of breath from across the room. She always said I was better at showing my feelings through my work than my words. Maybe that's why we relied so heavily on our performative arguments. They were easier than real vulnerability. After class, I find her waiting by our oak tree. It's the first time we've been alone in weeks, and all our carefully constructed walls feel paper thin. "Your film," she starts, then stops. "Harrison, I miss fighting with you." I blurt out, "The real fighting, I mean. The kind where we challenge each other to be better, not ... whatever that was in the cafe." She lets out a shaky breath. "I miss you too." But I meant what I said about figuring out what's real. Sometimes I feel like we've been playing these parts for so long, we've forgotten how to be ourselves. Maybe that's because being ourselves is scarier than any role we could play, I admit. When we're fighting, even fake fighting, I feel like I can tell you anything because it's all part of the performance. But being real, that's terrifying. Why is it terrifying? She asks, taking a step closer. Because I'm in love with you, I say, my voice cracking. Not the version of you I pretend to hate in public, not the secret girlfriend I get to have in private, but all of you, the way you fight for what you believe in, the way you see through every defense I put up, the way you push me to be better even when I'm being an absolute idiot who says things he doesn't mean because he's scared. Jamie's eyes fill with tears. I'm in love with you too, you impossible man. Even when you're being a defensive jerk about your father's company. Even when you're calling me out on my privilege in front of the entire cafe, especially then. She says with a watery laugh, because you might be privileged, but you're also the hardest working person I know. And I'm sorry I implied otherwise. I take her hand, not caring who might see. I'm sorry too, for everything I said, for hiding behind our act instead of being brave enough to be real with you. So what do we do now? She asks, squeezing my hand. Keep pretending. I think about her film, about the moments of truth she captured between our performances. I think about my own film, about the courage it takes to disappoint the right people. I think about the ring that's still in my pocket, waiting for the right moment, I think. I say slowly, maybe it's time for a different kind of performance, one where we get to be ourselves. You mean ... double quotes, I mean maybe we start with dinner. In public, no fighting, no pretending, just us. She smiles. That real smile I've missed so much. What will people think? They'll probably think we've lost our minds, I laugh. Or that we're playing some elaborate prank. Let them think what they want, Jamie says, standing on her tiptoes to kiss me right there under our oak tree, in full view of anyone passing by. I'm tired of pretending I don't love you. Later that evening, as we walk into our favorite restaurant hand in hand, we hear the gasps and whispers from our fellow students. Sarah, who's working as a hostess, actually drops her menus. Have you two lost your minds? She demands. Jamie and I look at each other and smile. Maybe, we say in unison. But at least we're crazy together, I add, pulling Jamie closer. That was incredibly cheesy, she informs me with her familiar critical tone. Want to fight about it? I ask, waggling my eyebrows. Always, she says, and kisses me again, right there in front of everyone, because sometimes the best kind of performance is no performance at all. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply be yourself, with the person you love, fighting and loving and living in full view of the world. And if people want to talk about how Harrison Wright and Jamie Chen went from being campus enemies to campus's most sickeningly in love couple overnight, well, that's just another part of our story. A story that, like all the best ones, was about love all along, even if it took us a while to drop the act and admit it. You two have been dating for 2 years. Sarah's screech echoes across the entire student union. 2 whole years. It's been a week since Jamie and I went public with our relationship, and we're finally sitting down with our friends to explain everything. The reactions have ranged from complete disbelief to betrayed outrage to hysterical laughter. In our defense, Jamie says, trying not to laugh at Sarah's increasingly red face, we did try to tell you all multiple times that we were perfect for each other by arguing constantly. Mike interjects, still looking shell-shocked, technically. Those were flirtatious debates. I correct him, earning an elbow in the ribs from Jamie. All those times I tried to set you up with other people, Sarah moans, dropping her head into her hands. All those interventions about your toxic rivalry. All those times I made you to sit at opposite ends of the table at parties ... double quotes, which we appreciated. Jamie says with a wink at me, made our bathroom makeout sessions seem much more coincidental. The bathroom I literally cannot, Sarah looks like she's having an existential crisis. The Twitter account? Oh my god. I run a Twitter account about your rivalry. We know, I grin, we've been your biggest followers. Jamie has all the best memes saved. I hate you both, Sarah declares. But she's fighting a smile. I can't believe you pulled this off for 2 years. You're either evil geniuses or completely insane. Bit of both, Jamie admits, squeezing my hand under the table. The truth is, going public has been both easier and harder than we expected. Easier because we finally get to be ourselves. Harder because now we have to face all the real-world implications we've been avoiding. Like graduation and what comes after. So, Mike asks, once he's recovered from his shock, what's the plan after graduation? Still planning to take that internship in LA, Harrison, and there it is. The elephant in the room that Jamie and I have been carefully dancing around for weeks. Jamie's hand tenses in mine. She has a job offer from an indie production company in New York. I have the LA internship. We haven't talked about it, really talked about it, since we went public. We're still figuring things out. I say carefully, figure faster, Sarah advises. You've only got 2 months left. 2 months. The words hit me like a physical blow. 2 months until we have to decide between our dreams and our relationship. When we were secretly dating, it was easier to pretend this moment would never come. Now, with everything out in the open, reality feels a lot more real. Later that night, Jamie and I are sprawled on my couch, supposedly watching a French new wave film for class, but really just lost in our thoughts. We should talk about it, Jamie finally says, pausing the movie during a particularly artistic shot of someone smoking contemplatively. About how pretentious French new wave can be, I attempt to joke, Harrison. I sigh, I know, LA is a great opportunity. She says softly, your father's company. Let's not bring my father into this. I cut her off, perhaps too sharply. He's already in this, Jamie persists. He pulled strings to get you that internship, which I earned on my own merits. I know you did, she sits up, turning to face me. That's what I'm trying to say, you earned it. You deserve it. And you shouldn't have to choose between your dream and double quotes. I finish when she trails off, but what about your dream? The New York job is perfect for you, is it? She runs a hand through her hair, a nervous habit I've come to love. I mean, yes, it's an amazing opportunity. But is it worth We both fall silent? The weight of unspoken words filling the room. This is different from our usual arguments. There's no performance here, no clever wordplay or witty comebacks. Just a people facing the reality that sometimes love isn't enough to bridge 0 miles. Remember our first real fight? Jamie asks suddenly. When we finally admitted we needed to figure out what was real and what was pretend. I nod, my throat tight. Maybe this is another one of those moments. She continues, maybe we need to be really honest about what we want. I want you, I say immediately. But you also want LA, and you want New York? And we both want our dreams. She leans her head against my shoulder. When did being real get so complicated? I think about all the times we practiced our fake fights, how we choreographed every glare and rehearsed every insult. Somehow, that seems easier than this raw honesty. What if, I start slowly, we treated this like one of our debates? Jamie lifts her head to look at me questioningly. I mean, we're good at arguing, right? So let's argue this out, pros and cons. Different perspectives, no holding back, but this time, we're not performing for anyone. Just us, being completely honest. A small smile tugs at her lips. You want to solve our long-distance relationship crisis with a debate. Hey, it's how we fell in love, isn't it? Okay, she sits up straighter, adopting her debate pose that I know so well. First point, long-distance relationships rarely work. Counterpoint, most long-distance relationships don't involve two people who spend 2 years maintaining an elaborate secret relationship. We're clearly not most couples. Second point, our careers are crucial at this stage. We can't sacrifice opportunities. Counterpoint, who says we have to sacrifice anything? We're filmmakers in the digital age. We can collaborate across coasts. Third point, New York and LA have very different film scenes. We might grow in different directions. Counterpoint, growth isn't a bad thing. And different perspectives make for better art. Imagine the projects we could create together, combining East Coast indie grit with West Coast polish. Jamie's eyes start to light up the way they do when she's getting excited about an idea. We could start our own production company eventually. Right, Chen Productions. Where arguments become art, I laugh. See? We're good at this, the honest arguing thing. Fourth point, she continues, but her voice is softer now. I'm scared. I'm scared that without our daily fights and secret meetings and elaborate performances, we'll lose what makes us us. I pull her closer. Counterpoint, what makes us us isn't the fighting or the secrecy, it's this. The way we challenge each other, push each other to be better, never settle for easy answers. Fifth point, I love you. That's not a debate point. Counterpoint, yes, it is. Because I love you enough to fight for us, even from opposite coasts. I kiss her then, because sometimes actions speak louder than words, even for two people who've built their relationship on elaborate verbal sparring. When we break apart, Jamie has that look in her eyes that I know means she's formulating a plan. What if we documented it? Documented what? Our long distance here to filmmakers, 2 cities, 1 relationship. We could make it into a project. Are you suggesting we turn our relationship into content? I'm suggesting we turn our challenge into art. She corrects me like we've always done. Remember my midterm film about masks, your piece about expectations? We're good at this, using our real feelings to make something meaningful. And suddenly, I can see it, split-screen phone calls, contrasting cityscapes, parallel stories of 2 young filmmakers chasing their dreams while holding on to each other. It's exactly the kind of pretentious indie film we love to argue about. Plus, Jamie adds with a mischievous smile. It gives us an excuse to call each other every day for project research. You're brilliant, I tell her, absolutely brilliant. I know, she says with fake arrogance. Want to fight about it? Always, I reply, pulling her in for another kiss, because maybe that's what real love is, not the absence of fights, but finding someone worth fighting for. Someone who pushes you to be better, challenges your assumptions, and loves you enough to argue with you across 3 time zones. And as Jamie starts excitedly outlining her vision for our documentary series, we'll call it Coast to Coast, a love story in arguments, I realize that maybe we don't have to choose between our dreams after all. Maybe, just maybe, we can have both, the careers and the relationship, the arguments and the love, the distance and the closeness. After all, we managed to keep our relationship secret for 2 years in a campus of gossip-hungry film students. Surely handling a few thousand miles will be easy in comparison. Right, but that's an argument for another day. And that's how Harrison Wright and Jamie Chen became the most infamous couple in film school history, Sarah concludes, raising her champagne glass to the crowd of wedding guests. From fake enemies to secret lovers to genuine partners, though if you ask me, they're still the most argumentative couple I've ever met, the guests laugh. And I squeeze Jamie's hand under the table. 3 years after graduation, we're finally having our wedding, and somehow it feels both completely surreal and absolutely right in their honor. Sarah continues, I've prepared a little surprise. Roll the footage. The lights dim, and suddenly the screen behind us comes to life with clips from our college days, all those carefully staged arguments caught on various phones and cameras. There we are by the oak tree, in the library, in the campus cafe, looking at them now. I can't believe everyone missed the obvious love in our eyes, even when we were pretending to fight. Then come clips from our documentary series, Coast to Coast, a love story in arguments, which ended up going viral and launching both our careers in ways we never expected. Split-screen footage of Jamie in New York and me in LA. having heated debates over Zoom about everything from camera angles to what we should have for dinner across different time zones. Only these two, Sarah narrates over the footage, would turn their long-distance relationship into an award-winning documentary series that critics called a masterclass in modern romance and an innovative exploration of how arguments can be expressions of love. Jamie leans over to whisper in my ear, "We were pretty brilliant, weren't we? Want to fight about it?" I whisper back, making her laugh. The truth is, that first year apart was both harder and easier than we expected. Harder because nothing quite replaces being able to turn your pretend fight into a real kiss. Easier because documenting everything gave us a purpose, a way to turn our separation into something meaningful. The documentary series started as a personal project, just us, to cameras, and a lot of late-night calls, but something about our story resonated with people. Maybe it was the authenticity of two young filmmakers trying to balance their dreams with their relationship. Maybe it was the way we turned our arguments into art, or maybe people just liked watching us bicker about aesthetic choices while clearly being madly in love. Whatever it was, by the end of that first year, we had a following. Film festivals started calling, streaming services started bidding. Suddenly, our little project about long-distance love was opening doors we never expected. The best part, Sarah tells the wedding guests, was watching these two realize that their arguments weren't just performances anymore, they were their love language. They taught us all that real love isn't about never fighting, it's about fighting fair, fighting together, and sometimes fighting for each other. The screen shows a clip from the final episode of our series, the day Jamie surprised me in LA, showing up at my doorstep with an ultimatum: either you agree that practical effects are superior to CGI, or you have to marry me. I had pulled out my grandmother's ring, the same one I'd been carrying since college, and replied, "Why not both?" Now, sitting at our wedding reception, watching our story play out on screen, I think about how far we've come from those two freshmen who nearly got kicked out of film studies for arguing too much. The footage transitions to more recent clips, us accepting our first indie film award, launching our production company. We kept the name right, Chen Productions, where arguments become art, buying our first house together in Chicago, our compromise between LA and New York. Some people, Sarah says, wrapping up her speech, spend their whole lives looking for someone who challenges them, inspires them, makes them better. Harrison and Jamie somehow found that in their first year of college. They just had to pretend to hate each other for 2 years before admitting it. Jamie squeezes my hand again, and I look over to see her crying slightly. For someone who once gave an impassioned 20-minute speech about why crying scenes in movies are usually emotionally manipulative, she's become surprisingly sentimental. "Don't you dare make fun of me for crying," she warns. "Wouldn't dream of it," I reply, even though we both know I absolutely will, probably during my own wedding speech, when it's my turn to speak. I stand up and look out at our gathered friends and family. Most love stories start with love at first sight, I begin. Ours started with an argument about whether practical effects are superior to CGI, a debate we're still having, by the way. And I'm still right, in your dreams, right? Jamie calls out, making everyone laugh. But here's the thing about arguing with Jamie Chen, I continue, looking at my wife. With all the love in my heart, you always end up learning something. Sometimes about film theory, sometimes about yourself, and sometimes about what love really looks like. In our case, it looked like pretending to hate each other while falling completely in love. I raise my glass to my beautiful wife, who challenges me every day to be better, think deeper, and fight harder for what matters. I look forward to arguing with you for the rest of our lives. Is that a promise? Jamie stands up, her eyes sparkling with that familiar mix of challenge and love that I first fell for in film studies. "Want to fight about it, always," she says, and kisses me in front of everyone we love. Later that night, after the speeches and the dancing and the countless congratulations, Jamie and I sneak away to our old oak tree on campus. We're having our reception in the university's event space, partly because it's beautiful, but mostly because it felt right to end our story where it began. Remember our first kiss here? Jamie asks, leaning against the trunk. You mean when you finally admitted I was right about when Harry met Sally? That is not how it happened and you know it, she protests, but she's smiling. Want to recreate it, for old time's sake. She pretends to think about it. I don't know, I might need some convincing. Perhaps a detailed argument about the merits of. I cut her off with a kiss, just like I did 4 years ago. When we break apart, she's wearing that soft, real smile that no one but me got to see for so long. I love you, I tell her, because sometimes the simplest arguments are the best ones. I love you too, she replies. Even when you're wrong about practical effects, which is never. Want to fight about it for the rest of our lives. And as we stand there under our oak tree, no longer hiding, no longer pretending, I think about all the chapters of our story. The fake fights that led to real love, the distance that brought us closer, the arguments that became our art. Some people might think it's strange to build a relationship on debate and disagreement, but for us, it was always perfect. Because every argument was really a conversation, every fight a chance to understand each other better, every disagreement an opportunity to grow together. So Jamie says as we walk back to our reception, hand in hand, about our next project ... double quotes, let me guess, you want to direct. Obviously, you can produce, we'll flip for it. Or we could collaborate, she suggests, like always. And that's really what our whole story has been about, collaboration. To people who learn it to turn arguments into art, fighting into flirting, and performance into reality, who found a way to be themselves by pretending to be something else entirely. Looking at Jamie in her wedding dress, still ready to debate the finer points of film theory even on our wedding day, I know that every argument, every pretense, every moment of our unusual courtship was worth it. Because it led us here to this perfect moment, where we get to be exactly who we are, to people who love to fight almost as much as we love each other. And maybe that's the best kind of love story, not one where people never disagree, but one where they learn it to disagree with grace, with passion, with love, where every argument is just another way of saying I care about what you think and your opinion matters to me and I choose you every single day. Ready to go start our next chapter? Jamie asks, holding out her hand, only if you're ready to admit I was right about. Not a chance, right? Worth a shot, Chen, right? And hand in hand, we walk back to our future, ready to face whatever arguments it brings, together. Because some love stories start with a kiss, but ours started with a fight. And we wouldn't have it any other way, the end. But really, practical effects are superior to CGI, and I'll die on this hill.